Looks like we are live and ready to begin. I believe we're waiting for Commissioner Kaplan, and there he is.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bernstein and Vice President Grossberg are present. I believe President Ruttenberg will be joining the second meeting, as will Commissioner Freeman. So whenever you're ready.
He said this.
Okay, you said Commissioner Kaplan is here?
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay, great. Then I'd like to call to order the Lakefront Parks and Natural Areas Committee meeting of the Park District of Highland Park on Wednesday, February 16, 2022 at 5:01 p.m. Pursuant to Section 7E of the Open Meetings Act, the President of the Board of Park Commissioners has made a finding that it is not practical or prudent to hold in-person meetings because of the COVID-19 public health emergency. Neither the elected officials nor the public will be allowed to attend regular or committee meetings in person, but will participate virtually. Links to the virtual meeting can be found on the Park District website. Roxanne, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein?
Hello?
Well, we know he's here. Commissioner Kaplan
Here.
and Vice President Grossberg.
Here. Executive Director Romes, are there any additions to the agenda?
None from staff.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public attending tonight's meeting?
We have no attendees at the current time,
Oh, very
except
good.
for Councilmember Littleworth.
Who cannot be overlooked, shall not be overlooked. Okay. So if anybody does join, we will use the raised hand function if you want to speak at the appropriate time. So we need to approve the minutes of our last meeting. So is there a motion to approve the Lakefront Parks?
So moved.
And is there a second? I'll second it. Motion carries. So we are moving on. We have Director Voss, who's going to introduce Greg Wolterstorff of V3 for our Millard Bluff grading plans.
Good afternoon or evening. Share my screen here. I'm going to start as soon as I can get this to the slideshow. All right, so at the January Lakefront Parks and Natural Areas Committee meeting, did a short presentation on a tree removal bid that we had put out. So just want to kind of briefly touch on that. I talked about it briefly at the Finance Committee the following week when we reported that we were not going to move forward with that bid. So just a quick reminder, when we had the Millard Bluff issues and we had V3 companies did a bluff stabilization study, and one of the recommendations was removal of many of the trees that are on that bluff. That is, they're falling over. They are the roots are just the roots of the tree are just taking everything out, and there's not a lot of topsoil, and that increases the chance of more erosion. So when we put the tree bid out, we had a mandatory bid meeting, and we did have a few attendees, but what we heard by both people that attended as well as companies that chose not to attend was that the time frame was just too short, and then the winter access, especially along the beach, just wasn't prudent really for them to tackle the project. So we did get one bid, but we did reject it as we chose to then decide to go to join the tree bid with the second portion of the recommendations, which we're going to talk about right now, which is the grading of the bluff. So this will plan to go out for bid in the summer, and now we will look to do this work, both projects, the tree removal and the grading work, either right before Labor Day, start right after before Labor Day or after Labor Day itself. So a reminder, these pictures, these I took back in May of 2020. This is when we first had, it was very rainy that spring, and we had a lot of erosion along the bluff and slumping, and this is at the top there. I just have a couple of these pictures here. You can kind of see there's a bench right here, corner of this bench. This bench then actually collapsed in 2021. We had removed the wood, nobody could sit on it, but the side had actually fallen down into down the bluff as well. And then here's another one too. This is going more northbound towards the gazebo. So this is what we have had on site there, as those of you that have frequented have seen, and this is our worry. So I'm going to now introduce Greg Walterstorff, who he came to the August 2021 board meeting to talk about the Bluff study that they did. And he is going to take it away and talk a little bit about what we're looking at here with what the attempt and the goal is with the grading of the top portion of the bluff. So take it away, Greg.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate the ability to be here with you all and present this information, and look forward to some of your questions, and hopefully we can clarify or address any of the concerns that you may have. But as part of the study and evaluation of the bluff, we did do a drone survey. So I thought I'd share some of the information, and part of the reason the drone survey really made sense on a project like this is just the amount of data and amount of information you can see. And obviously you're also picking up picture images of the site itself. So this is an isometric view of the Millard Bluff at the time of the drone survey. You can see some of the conditions down along the shoreline, and also it's a little harder to see, but some of the erosion conditions as well up at the top of Bluff are a little more covered in this image with some of the trees. And go ahead and flip to the next one, Dan. This is then flipping and looking now from the south. The other interesting part is just being able to pick up the detail and the path locations and some of that stuff up on the top of the bluff as well. One more for me, Dan. So then using the isometric view, I thought this really helps display for everyone the primary concern we've got at the top of the bluff. So the red line delineates that change in condition from where we have generally flatter slopes in that 2-to-1 range through the middle of the bluff. And all of a sudden you get towards the top of the bluff where we've got about a 10-foot vertical rise from where the red line exists to the top. And that is really the primary concern, is we're starting to lose that top of bluff area, and have a concern that as that falls, it continues to add weight to the bluff, and all of that weight and all that concern, along with the trees that are falling down, like Dan mentioned, creates some concerns. So this project is to alleviate some of that weight and some of those steep slopes. So flip to the next one for me, Dan. Just a quick look from October of 2021. Conditions did change quite a bit from where the photos Dan showed you in May of 20 to October of 21. We now have these 10-foot vertical bluff slopes there. Yeah.
Dan Johnson, I'm on the one with the red line still. What's on my screen is not changing with Greg's description. Am I the only one having that problem?
I'm seeing the pictures, the 3 pictures.
Yeah, I see the 3 pictures as well.
Okay, I've still got the red line up.
Yeah, you may have had a freeze up on your side.
And everything's, just keep going and I'll.
Okay. Go ahead to the next one, Dan. So what we've done now, part of the concern is how do we address those steep slopes? As I showed, the red line kind of covered most of that top of bluff area. But one of the concerns we have is tree removal of some of these really legacy trees at the top of slope. So this picture shows our grading plan, but it also shows tree locations. And you can see some of these key trees that we're hoping to preserve. Yep, that's exactly, Dan, one right there. There's another one right there. And so we are doing some selective grading around those areas with the desire and hope to preserve some of those They tend to be really nice oaks up on the top of that bluff that we would like to preserve. And at the same time, still looking to take that vertical feature out. And so how we would do that is we would basically, the red line creates that starting point. An excavator would reach down and pull that material off of the bluff to the top. And then Dan, if you can point out the area where we would be placing that material and regrading. Yep, into that area is where we would place it and continue the flat plateau feature of the top of the bluff. Try not to change that. We still want that to be flat and be consistent with what nature had given to us. So that's one of the images there. If you can click one more, Dan. This is now the southern section, very similar, where we've got 3 sections of grading removal and a zone along the bluff that we're trying to respread that material so we don't have to export it. If we take that material off site and export it, it gets really expensive. So we've chosen to put it back in place right there. And those are locations that we can avoid the trees and try and mimic that natural character. One more for me, Dan. So in general, just to orient you to the grading then are those yellow lines that you see. And the yellow shaping that you see is generally where some of the fill will occur. So if you know where the gazebo is, and you know where the bridge is, and that garden shed, this gives you a better sense of where that falls compared to the featuring at the top of the bluff. One more, Dan.
Very good. Yeah. So then, so just ending up here, I have a few pictures. I know some of us haven't been up there in a while and don't get the chance to, but you can see the fence. These pictures were taken, I think, on Monday or maybe it was Friday. I was up there, been up there a few times last week. So the fence has been in place since May of 2020, and the lake is obviously to the right in this picture. And just wanted to show a sense of what, where the excavation is going to be happening. It's going to be primarily on the lake side of that fence, where there, as Greg described, the excavator would kind of reach down and then bring that soil and the material up to get that 2-to-1 level. So that this is right at as you come out of the garden headed north. And this is, kind of that open space area there. This tree here is one of the trees that Greg was talking that we would grade around. Oops, sorry, went the wrong way there. Now I'm looking south through that open area. Again, those benches there would have to come out. This is a permanent can would come out because this whole side of the bluff then would be, dug back to create those 2-to-1 ratios that we want. And I'm standing at the north end of the clearing here. You can kind of see the asphalt end of that asphalt road that kind of wraps around and takes you down. And so this is kind of the area where that material will then be spread, throughout that area and seeded and restored. I believe I have one more. Yeah, so this is the beginning. Once you start into the north section of the woods and the path there, and again, there's a couple trees here that would be kept and graded around, and then this section of the bluff here would be pulled back, and then this path will completely go away, and we will have a new path more to the west that doesn't exist at that point right now, but will then tie into that the wooden bridge and then come out on the other side. Those are the pictures that I have. So at this point, any questions?
Commissioner Bernstein.
No questions.
Commissioner Kaplan.
No questions.
Okay, I do have questions. If we can just go back a few shots, just so I can get an understanding of what you mean by this 2-to-1 and the reinforcing and all of that. So I understand that as we look down, so we see this 10-foot, yeah, can we keep it right here? So So tell me again what the red line represents.
The red line is where we get this change in slope. And
Okay,
Dan, if you can kind of show that 2-to-1 slope in that middle area. Yep. And then as we get to that red line, it really changes to almost a vertical slope going straight up to the top of Bluff.
so
What we
we're
want to
gonna-
do is continue that 2-to-1 slope, which means that's going to continue up, but it'll push essentially 20 feet back from where that point is. So as you saw where that fence was located in some of Dan's photos, that was about 20 feet back from that top of Bluff. That's right around where the new top of Bluff will be. And
Got
the
it.
goal is, as this material continues, and as you could see, it's sloughing and falling. We don't want that to fall down into these areas. And part of the reason is that weight just stays in that area. But the other one of the major issues is as it falls in, it creates these wells and pools where when it rains, the water will actually build up behind that material. And then it creates almost like this little river down the slope. And those little rivers create those erosion nicks that are then problematic going forward. It erodes the topsoil away. It becomes difficult for the vegetation to stabilize it. So for all of those reasons, it's good to go and take those vertical zones out and then re-stabilize it.
Got it. So I don't know what your familiarity is with our Rosewood Beach, but it seems to me that this sounds a lot like that we were having these big shelves, these 20-foot shelves or whatever, that need to be more evenly graded down to the beach. So so I think I understand the concept of it now. So you're going to take, because you said the fence is 20 feet from that red line, you're going to take the area of that 20 feet and then regrade it.
Yes.
And somehow maintain some of the more, the larger trees or the more historic trees there. Okay.
Yes.
So, okay, I get that. So now just moving. So let's say I'm coming in through the north entrance and I'm going to come down that little area, and then I'm no longer going to kind of be able to go straight. I'm going to have to kind of move a little bit west to get, that's going to be my path through the clearing. Okay.
Yeah, so where the detour to the bridge is going to continue. Right now, you kind of walk straight and you make a right turn. It's going to be a more gradual shot to the bridge because some of the material in that area will be spread there. So, we were actually going to begin that in the fall of last year, and we paused it because once we learned that the material has to be spread there, it didn't make sense to move it already. So yeah, it'll kind of go on an angle through that bridge and then come out the other way.
Okay, gotcha. And then as I head through the clearing, I understood we already knew that we were going to lose the path to the east of the garden, and we were going to be directing people through the garden.
Correct.
Is that's still the route?
That is still the route. There's no grading work going to happen directly east of the garden. But what happens with that screenings path, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm using you're using your words. The water collects actually right around the garden shed, and it really starts to kind of take off and turn into a flowing river when it's really wet and pours down. It used to be a clump of 3 benches there, and 2 of those benches have completely collapsed on the one side that those had to be removed. So while the grading is not going to happen, we're going to remove that path. Our staff, our natural area staff, Rebecca's on the call here too, will eventually then restore that and with native plantings, but we'll direct people right through the garden to keep the weight and keep the material and to keep more erosion occurring on that side.
Okay, I think I have 2 more questions. Now I'm coming up from the path from the south. Okay, at a point, I get a chance to fork. I know there's actually more than one chance there. Is that it? So there's kind of a ramp on the left and there's stairs on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still a choice that's available to us?
Yes, the old road to the house
Mhm.
will still be there, and then the red we call it in the parks crew, we call it the red gravel stones there, steps. That'll still remain. And then at the top of the top of those steps, where that other fork that you kind of referred to is, we will direct people straight through the garden, and the option to the right will eventually go away.
Right. Okay. Just going back to the concept of Rosewood Beach, the way we sort of solved it was that we changed the grade of sand that we used so we don't lose the fine grain of sand, and that was part of our solution. Is there a material issue that would stop or help stop any future erosion? I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to look for
That's a
a
good
parallel.
question. So in this case, we did do very deep soil borings from the top of the bluff all the way down basically to where the Lake Michigan level is, to try and determine what the makeup of the bluff was. And interestingly, in this case, it's all clay, heavy clay. So we don't necessarily have sand seams that are running water beneath the bluff into the edges of the bluff itself. So we didn't have a drainage concern that we needed to address from that perspective. And the other good part about this bluff is all of it right now from the face of the bluff actually slopes to the west, away from the bluff. And so as we do our grading and we put the material up on top, we're preserving and protecting that drainage course, because we do want to minimize as much as we can the water from going to the east. The only water that should go down that bluff is the water that actually falls on the bluff itself. Everything else needs to go to the west because it's much more protected and much more controlled to the west. And so we are preserving that aspect. So we're not doing any, Rosewood, you did some decent drainage work up on top of the bluff as well. That's not required in this case. We're just going to do the grading because of the clays that exist on this site.
Okay, so there's no additional materials, large boulders or anything like that we're anticipating needing at the top of this.
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions? Cal, Brian? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, are we moving on? Let's see. So, is there any other business, Executive Director Rones?
So we've gone pretty quickly through this agenda, and thank you, Greg, and Dan and Rebecca for this portion of the meeting. I know we have Finance Committee right after this meeting, and it's only 5:24. We can begin that meeting earlier, of course. However, there are a few items that we could provide a quick update on if the committee would like. And the two items, just a quick update. Jeff could probably give just a quick status update on discussions regarding the Deutsche Park, as well as a quick update. I'm losing my memory here, Jeff. There was another item we were going to give a quick update on, but if it's okay with you, Terry, we could just give a couple quick updates on those.
Yeah.
Jeff, is Jeff here actually?
Yeah, I'm right
Yeah.
here. I'm trying to find my camera button.
How about, is there any kind of Sunset Woods update?
Sure.
Yeah, I can start by giving a brief update on that. So the pretty much all of the play equipment has arrived, which is great news. We will be able to get it in the spring. There were some concerns about delays, but all that has arrived now. On the other hand, though, most of the construction is kind of taken a pause because of the weather. But our plan is, the goal is that the playground is completed by Memorial Day, and then we are looking into some sort of an opening, which would probably occur maybe in June. We'll have more information on that later.
Okay.
And then, Brian, I believe the other update you were thinking about was in regards to the signage in Sunset Woods and that one particular sign. Would you like me to talk about that?
Yeah, why don't you give a brief update on that? Or in fact, you haven't heard anything about this yet, so might as well give a little bit of background.
Yeah, and I apologize. I would, for this, I would come a little more prepared normally and have some photos and stuff, but I will just give a little explanation. So at Sunset Woods Park, if you're in the parking lot on the farther north end, there is a wooden monument sign that's the same style as the Sunset Woods Park monument sign, except it says Sheehan Woods. And that sign has been there for probably about 20 years or so. And what it's doing is it's kind of representing the fact that the Sheehan family used to own this portions of this site, where there's Sheehan Court on the other side. So there's a history there. And on that sign is a small brass plaque that gives a little bit of a more detailed little story on that. So as part of the larger playground project, we wanted to look at the park as a whole, and we're updating all the signage in the park to our current standards. So that would be internal park signs and also the monument sign. And as part of that, we were looking to remove this current monument sign. So we've reached out to the Sheehan family. We were not able to locate any type of agreement between the Sheehans and the park district when this was put in. And we've confirmed with them that no such agreement seems to exist. What we are considering is we want to still tell that story. And so we are putting a interpretive sign. We plan to, by the playground, to talk about like the history of the different rocket ships that we've had in the playground. And we were thinking of a similar style sign somewhere in the park that talked about the Sheehan family and the history within the park. So we did talk to the family about this, and they did have some interest in that. The next question, though, was what they really were hoping is they could still keep this legacy of the name kind of associated with the park. And for example, they said you drive by right now and you see that sign, you see the name Sheehan when you drive by Sunset Woods. They're not asking for us to rename the park, but they would like to not lose that aspect. That interpretive sign would be within the park, so you wouldn't see it when you were walking by or driving by. And they were interested in us still coming up with a way to be able to keep that legacy of that name, whether it be on one of the monument signs or some other way. So we recently had a discussion with them, and we're going to kind of brainstorm on some suggestions, and then we plan to come back to this committee with maybe some recommendations and get feedback from the committee members. So any questions on
that? Commissioner Kaplan?
No.
Commissioner Bernstein? I'll take that as a no. I do not have any questions either. I'm interested to hear about where you might go. I hope we can reach some sort of a amenable agreement with that.
Thank you. And then I'll go ahead and provide a brief update on the Deutsch tot lot. So after we met with the committee, we've met with the city a couple times, and we've also met with the Property Owners Association. As I think the committee recalls, the city was a party to the agreement due to an access path along the side that was needed for access to the ponds behind that. So we've talked to the city, and they no longer need that access path, and so we're going to kind of be able to eliminate that when we're doing the transfer agreement. And then secondly, we've had a couple conversations with the Property Owners Association, and we're kind of working out some more finer details. They've come back with a few questions about maybe longer term maintenance, what it might cost for them to maintain it down the road, what kind of reserves they might need to start putting aside. And so we're going to be getting back to them with some questions along those lines. And then we'll follow back up with the committee if there's any changes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I'll just take silence as a no. President Ruttenberg, you've joined us. We just got a tot lot update. I don't know if you heard any of that. Okay. And Barney, you have any questions? Have you heard anything? Okay, I'll go with a no. All right, so if that's all the updates we have, did anybody join us from the public during this time?
No, there are no attendees still, so
All right.
we can adjourn.
Well, we will not be going into closed session, so is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second it. So the meeting is adjourned at 5:30 PM. Good meeting,
Okay.
Roseburg.